Welcome back to the Wine Tech Insiders podcast. This is episode 8. Today we have Seb from Troly. Seb.
Good morning.
Jonathan from Bottlebooks.
And good evening.
And Nick from Wine Owners.
Hello.
Sorry, I just wanted to give everybody a chance to say hello because normally I give all the introductions and nobody gets a chance to say hello.
We're just going to blame the internet latency. Everyone is just falling behind.
Exactly. So first up, wine trends. Fine wine trading on LiveX is up, and there was an interesting article, and that's interesting, kind of understandable, but what was also interesting was there was a quote saying, as elsewhere in the economy, technological innovations have swept through the industry, transforming the behavior of both wine and businesses and buyers. The past year has seen the launch of new wine tech startups, digital wine apps, soaring wine sales, and virtual tastings, ensuring that people are no longer anxious about buying or trading online. What do we think? Is this a trend? Is this a trend that's here to stay? Seb, you're nodding.
Oh, it's 100% a trend that's been here for well over 10, 15, even 20 years now. And we've only accelerated it by about 5 to 10 years, and it's most definitely here to stay. Absolutely. I think we're going to have social interactions and events and ways of mingling together as a society that are going to be different. But the whole concept of shopping is most definitely going to stay online. Once you've discovered the practicality of buying online, you're not going back 100%. The newer generations know that for sure.
Jonathan, what about in the B2B world? Is that moving online? Is that going to stay online?
Buying, I think that is something that we're not so much into the details about the actual buying, but in terms of promoting and tasting wines, I think we see a lot of momentum in this area. UK we do a lot in, of course, and we see not just more and more events doing digital and digital wine requests, but that the visitors are also embracing this as well. And if you compare to sort of how many requests were going through digital events, even as recent as January, to compared to what we've seen in April and now at the end of April, it just continues to go up. And so it requires sort of both sides of interest in it. But in terms of finding new wines and simplifying, how do I get some samples on the wines that I'm interested in? There seems to be, at least in certain markets, some broader acceptance of that as being an additional channel of how to do this in the future, or at least today and probably in the future.
And keeping in mind also, just to add a bit onto the wine and the restaurants kind of a scene, restaurants with food, restaurants genuinely speaking on a B2B front, everything they do today is pretty much by hand. Every invoices, every accounts payable, every checking of the box when there's a delivery, they have different suppliers. All of that is done by hand. So even though the discovery experience might still remain more or less human driven, I think the purchase experience is increasingly going to get digitalized, simply because, I mean, we're all tech, right? We all understand that, holy crap, you do not want to do anything by hand. Restaurants are still doing everything by hand, and that's about to change. That started to change with integrated accounting system, with point of sale, with integrated fulfillment system, with supply chain, right? So there's definitely going to be a very strong push towards technology in every aspect of society for sure.
Now, Nick, you're solving this problem for importers and restaurants. What do you see?
So I think in terms of the growth, and I think that article also referred to a broadening of wines being traded through LiveX, not just a deepening, I think is being driven by a number of trends that are coming together. One of those trends is the shift to e-commerce, particularly within the fine wine end of the market, and away from what would have been sort of what I call product lists, where you've got an inquire button rather than a basket. You've got connectivity between LiveX and the bigger e-commerces that are looking for stock to augment their existing inventories. So you're seeing that trend towards blended inventories and lower working capital intensity. And that's definitely driving the trend. That's definitely also driving the broadening of the market in terms of what's trading and what's selling in the secondary market. Because as soon as you inject large inventories into e-commerce, you're attracting and connecting with a different audience than you are with a bunch of B2B trading users who are on the exchange directly. So, and we're seeing that with the hub, our retail management system, which is now connected with LiveX and which is able to pull in those virtual inventories, filter them, end up with a subset that's compatible with the core wine list of a particular merchant and the market that they're serving, and that's really working. So it's really about connectivity. It's about a massive shift to e-commerce, I think, through the last 12 months, and it is exciting to see more experimentation, I think, than we've seen in a long time as well. An example that springs to mind is Richard Dawes Fine Wines in the UK, traditional wine merchant, coming out with a new brand called Marlowe, targeted at the younger generation, targeted at the millennials and the 30-somethings and the 40-somethings. And they've done great with it. But it's not just about the younger generation starting to get into wine. It's that the supply side is also recognizing where the market opportunity is and doing a better job of segmenting and profiling the different markets that are out there and making themselves, frankly, more interesting and more appealing.
Jonathan, are you also seeing more appetite for experimentation? Not just digitization, but trying new things.
Most definitely. I think there is, of course, broad optimism about the pendulum swinging back where we're able to not just be forced to do things exclusively online, but also to do stuff also in person again. That said, there's also, we see a new reality or settling in that even now, looking as far into the future as November, we have people planning full-on digital events. And some of these organizations are, like even 3 months ago, I think would have been thinking differently. But the reality of how difficult it can be in order to bring producers from one country into another country, and how successful that sort of an event will be, despite everybody wanting to get together. I think that has opened some, increased the openness to experimenting, and also the number of successful digital initiatives that have happened, that has given other people confidence that there is something, or it is effective, and can in some ways be more effective than the physical event. So experimentation, most definitely, but it's built on the recent months and the last year of a lot of people doing a lot of different things, and a few patterns proving to be more successful than others.
So what about for winery? Right, go.
Look, I was going to say, overall, I think the whole COVID thing that we've all heard of has effectively accelerated, as I was saying earlier on. But the actual trend of needing the industry to adapt and invent new product and present themselves differently is nothing new. We know that the newer generations, call them the millennials, call them the Gen Z, are far less likely to open a bottle and drink the whole bottle by themselves. They're far more inclined towards canned wine. They're far more inclined towards tasting wines. They're far more agnostic when it comes to wine versus spirits versus cocktails versus craft beers, right? So the industry itself has basically been pushed for a number of years. I do think the industry also have this romance, this classical traditionalism that is beautiful, but also a bit of a challenge. And increasingly, we're seeing wineries now who are realizing, okay, I do need to sort of try something else. And COVID has just forced them, literally just forced them to try something. And we've seen wineries who are actually making more money by doing online tasting than they did with actually having a physical tasting room. So that's a good starting point, but I do think the industry as a whole needs to continue innovating to adapt to the newer generations, adapt to the new style of wine drinking, right?
So worldwide wine consumption dropped 2.8% in 2020. And I don't know, any reaction to that? Does that sound right? Did you think that at the start of 2020 it was going to be worse, or did you think maybe it would rise a bit because everybody's, buying wine and drinking too much at dinner or whatever? But I don't know. Any reaction to that?
Well, I mean, surely it can't be a surprise, given how much wine is consumed within the on-trade, that there would be a drop.
It's
that's
about 50%, isn't it?
Huge part of the market that just disappeared overnight, right? Clearly, what was surprising was the extent to which the slack was taken up by people drinking at home, and maybe moving, I think, as was documented during that period, on average to lower value bottles, but increasing their consumption quite considerably. So I guess, that's the in and the outs. We saw retailers, merchants in the UK with maybe 40 to 50% dependency on the on-trade, maybe ending the year pretty flat with the previous comparable like-for-like 12 months. And that, is a great testament to how that very significant shortfall was taken up by the consumer at home. But overall, I'm not surprised that they felt that they fed a bit.
I'm pretty sure from an educated guess or from readings I've done. Overall, I'm pretty sure on-trade is about 50% of the market. So of course, it's definitely going to hurt extensively. I was literally talking to a winery last week who basically lost 100% of their sales, right? COVID hit, and from day they haven't received a single order in the last 12 months, simply because their strategy was strictly retail. And look, there's a question, I'm not sure about that 2% as to whether it's by volume or by dollars. But I wouldn't be surprised that overall it's probably worst when you look at it by dollars, because people are now buying slightly cheaper wines, trying to get more for their buck. Even though now with the recovery slowly starting in different countries, I think we're going to see the other way around. The other trend's going to kick off, and a lot of people will kind of go, oh, I've not really been spending a whole lot in the last 12 months. I've got a bit of savings now. And they're going to start buying, and they're going to buy whatever they feel like. You're currently looking at anything to do with recreational goods, motorcycles, boats, anything that is having fun is basically sold out, right? There's a waiting list. So you can imagine that increasingly the high value wines, people will start treating themselves now that we're kind of going back to, quote, normals.
Champagne sales are already up in the US and UK. So,
100%.
Yeah. Great. Next, move on to the London Wine Fair. The first major digital wine fair is coming up, and there was a bit of a preview day that, full disclosure, Bottlebooks is quite involved in, as we provided the technical background for everything. So maybe, Jonathan, you can give us a little bit of preview and a report on how that went. And you'll also be able to see Nick there, who will be on some panels for wine owners. Jonathan will be also on some panels, and Lori from Chinery too. So you'll see a lot of the wine insiders at the London Wine Fair if you're attending. Jonathan, tell us, how did it go on Wednesday, and what can we expect on May 17, 18?
Yeah, as you said, full disclosure, we've been an excited partner of the London Wine Fair over the past 5 years, and we're particularly excited to be able to come together with them this year to put together a digital platform. And indeed, yesterday was the first day out with that at a special event called Welcome Back Wednesday. The event is not until May 17th, but due to the opening plans in the UK, where the on-trade is targeted for opening on the 17th, there needed to be a special day for the on-trade. And so that was decided to be yesterday. About half of the exhibitors took part that will be at the main fair, with a bit more of a UK focused. Richard Siddle held a discussion in the morning about how the retail industry, or not the retail, sorry, the on-trade was looking, and how it was coming back, and changes, and will there be more tech or lower tech, and some of the challenges that they're facing. And it was a really interesting session, and I think that's what we're looking forward to in of more, is a lot more content. There was also some new features around being able to request samples and book sampler kits from the exhibitors, and that moved very briskly yesterday. So a lot of requests, a lot of leads went through the system for the exhibitors, a lot of interested visitors. So and this was just the mini version of the fair. So we're looking forward to the big event, and yeah, it's a pleasure to be part of it.
So is the whole thing going to be online? Like 100%? There's no
100% online. 100% online.
Nice,
so
nice.
Master classes. Everybody who's registered for a master class, or I wouldn't say everybody, but if anybody can watch a master class, and those of the people who are selected for tasting will get a package sent to their home, and so they can have the wines tasted at home. This is proven to be very successful also with wines from Spain, that is in the middle of their UK initiative, where they've been doing the same thing at home. Yeah, and then different exhibitors are having highlights from their portfolio repackaged and made available for order for the trade. And then you can also request individual wines as well. So it's kind of a combination of everything, really.
Interesting, yeah. It'll be interesting because there's also going to be a whole lot of wealth in terms of knowledge that will be recorded automatically. All of those tastings, all of those master classes, all those discussions now being on video are effectively valuable to anyone else who wants to try and discover any other retailer who wants to discover new wines, right?
Yeah, and I think that's one thing that London Wine Fair is always differentiate. It's one of the differentiators. I mean, every event has unique aspects. One of theirs has been, as long as we've known them, is a strong slant towards content, and that's continuing this year. And what I think bodes well for them, and I think is worth anybody who's doing a digital event taking note, is how much content you're doing. Because if all it is just about browsing a website or something like that, it's not going to be quite as interesting as when you have really interesting panels, presentations, master classes, content. So the London Wine Fair's plan is to have this content be available online to all of the attendees for at least 3 months afterwards. And that also brings in some of the unique digital aspects, because normally the content is not recorded. and the rooms are physically limited. So instead of limiting attendance to 80 people for a session that nobody else will ever get to experience, now you can actually literally attend every session at the fair.
You're on time.
And on time. You're not waiting for a ticket. You're not waiting in line. So it's an illustration of how sometimes the digital events can have some advantages over purely physical events.
The scalability of digital is outstanding, right? And very, very few truly grasp what it means to be able to fit 60 people in a room and to be able to just, at the same cost, drive 600 people. It's it's outstanding. Bloody technology, huh?
Yes.
Nick, tell us about the London Wine Fair. What does it mean in the UK for the trade? Do you have a perspective on that?
Well, I think we're as we've touched upon before, we're at a moment of great optimism. It is a reopening. We've had 35 million jabs over here, and we're looking forward to the time when everyone can mingle and meet and behave as they used to behave. So I think the timing is fantastic. I think it's a great opportunity to provide the London Wine Fair with an international, a global perspective, if you like, because I think it is pretty much the only event of any significance that's taking place anywhere in the world around this sort of period in time. So I think it's a wonderful opportunity to really kickstart the industry, to those people who were significantly dependent on the on-trade for their business are going to be right back in it at this point, ahead of the opening of the on-trade on the 17th of May. So timing is extraordinary, really, in that regard. Lucky, maybe, but hey, the harder you work, the luckier you get, right? So I think that it's timing is great. The trend towards people consuming information, participating in those events online is perfect. People are used to it. We've had 12 months being warmed up to the idea of online tastings and virtual events. So everyone's comfortable with that format now as well. I think a year ago, people were a little perturbed by watching other people on a panel sized, 3.5 centimeters by 1.5 centimeters high. I think people have just recalibrated to all of that now. So I think it's an amazing opportunity for people to make connections. After all, fairs, events are all about meeting points for buyers and sellers, and that's going to happen at scale in this event. And it's also going to be, I think, a great forum for really figuring out how you as a business move forward, how you capitalize on these trends that we've talked about, and figure out how you're going to apply those to your own growth.
We have some breaking news here. Larry Kudlow was on Fox News. He's a Fox News host, and he was fuming that Biden's climate plan will force Americans to drink plant-based beer. Seb, your reaction.
Say that again. So Biden's plan will force Americans to drink plant-based beer?
Isn't that what it is anyway?
Yeah.
How is beer not plant-based? Look, you're starting with Fox and you just lost me from the very first word, right?
Okay, that's episode 8 of the Wine Tech Insiders podcast.
And before you close off, right, I just wanted to add a little remark here. Nick is basically suggesting he's looking at us as a 3 centimeters little face. Nick, I'm sorry, you're full screen on my screen. You've got the full real estate on my screen. You're that lucky. I better be full screen on your screen too.
Maybe you thought you are, that's true.
Thanks again, our Wine Tech Insiders. Nick from Wine Owners, Jonathan from Bottlebooks, and Seb from Troly. See you all in a couple
See you later,
of weeks.
guys. Have a good
Bye,
one.
guys.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.